Okay, great. We can start now. So last week we finished chapter 4 with the part of VP, and I finished on the complements of VP, and Professor Hector Campos worked on the modifiers of VP. You already have homework, and 3 groups that I assigned already submit your homework, and I already provided feedback in the discussion forum. So if you finish your homework, go there and check your answer with the groups that already submit the homework. And if you have any questions regarding the answer, then you can talk to me. Okay? You still can't hear me. Okay, so today we are working on noun phrase, and when we finish noun phrase, you can you can record. Actually, that is what I'm going to do. We have to record the the lesson that we are learning today, and we'll keep this lesson. Okay, we'll keep this lesson, and later on, if you want to watch it again, you can always watch. So yes, you can record a lesson. It's okay. So let me come back to what I'm teaching. Today we've tried to focus on noun phrase, and in my first part, I will cover the noun phrase modifiers and also the complements, but just one part of the complement. Then for the second part, half of the today class, Professor Hector will cover the post-nominal complement and the most important thing, the case. First of all, I have 2 slides. The first, even myself, I divide into 2 parts just because I don't want to make the slides become too heavy to upload on Zoom. Now, in the first part of my class, okay, I will cover the structure of noun phrase. I will talk about the determiners. Okay, last time when you learn to draw the tree, we talk about 3 elements: the complements, the modifiers, and the specifiers. But last time we didn't have any examples of specifiers for you. So today you will see that determiners will function as the specifiers. And I will cover the NP modifiers. Okay, let's move on now. Before we start, I want to introduce to you some new terms. Actually, those are the terms that we're going to use so many times in today's class. If you find yourself have some problems with the terms, then it will be very difficult to continue. So I will show you the terms for you. The first one I want to show you is an adjective, what we call prenominal. Prenominal, you can guess from your morphology knowledge, we have pre, which means go before, and nominal is an adjective from noun. So if we have something that we call prenominal, it means that one will appear before the noun. So if we have prenominal complement, it means the complement will go before the noun. And if we have a prenominal modifiers, and we have a modifier before the noun. We also have post-nominal, which means it appears after the noun. For example, we have post-nominal complement, the complement that goes after the noun. And also, we also have post-nominal modifiers. And we also have the term the verbal noun. That means the nouns that are derived from the verbs. Maybe it can use the back formation process or the derivational process that we have learned last time in the course Introduction to Linguistics. Now, for example, if you have the verb travel, you can have the noun travel. So this noun travel is a verbal noun because it is derived from the verb. Or we have the verb argue, so we can have the noun argument. And this is a verbal noun because this noun derived from the verb. Okay, if you have any questions before I can move to the main part of today's class with the terms. Are you clear with the 3 terms that I introduced for you here? Okay, so clear, right? Let's move on. Now, first of all, let's look at the structure of the NP. Last time we have the VP, and as you remember, for the VP, we have the V as the head of the VP, and we do not put the tense into that. No matter what the sentence we have, we just use the bare form. For the tense, later on, you will add into the tree, okay? Not in this chapter. Now for now, you can look at the 3 examples of noun phrase I have here. Mary, apples, and ice cream. Okay, we just go with the NP. We go to N bar, and this is the place for complements. Later on, we go to the head noun N, and then we have the noun. Okay, seems very simple. Now let's talk about determiners. Determiners are treated as the specifiers of NPs. So if you have the noun phrase the girl, okay, then you will draw the specifier here. Can you see the screen that I share? Anybody has problem? Okay, so you can see D as a determiner, and it is the determiner in the noun phrase the girl, and it works as a specifier. The same for here, you draw D here for a boy, for my house, for those books. So what exactly is determiners? The noun may appear with a determiner. We call it D. Once again, I need to remind you that last time in the course Introduction to Linguistics, we use the term DET. This time, just use D only. Do not use DET anymore, okay? And what can be considered as determiners? We have definite and indefinite articles. We have possessive, we have demonstrative. All of them are considered as determiners. Now, for example, under the definite and indefinite articles, my, your, his, her, possessive. This, that, these, those, the demonstratives. Okay, and they work or they function as a determiner. So we draw D in a tree. Okay, now the third part of my first part is the noun phrase modifiers. Do you remember the modifiers? Okay, let me check if you still remember. Đức Minh, hello Minh, can I hear you? Đức Minh, hello. Can't. Okay, I can't hear anything from Minh. Are you talking to me, Minh? Because I can't hear anything from you. Can anyone hear him?
Hello, hello.
Yeah, I can hear you now, Minh. Okay.
Yeah.
Minh, can you tell me what is a modifier?
A modifiers are things that are necessary to complete the meaning of a sentence.
Mm-hmm. And can you give me an example of noun phrase modifiers that you can think of?
I think it's adjectives like a beautiful woman, and the beautiful should be a modifier.
Very good, thank you. Thanks a lot, Minh. Okay, so as you can see, like your friends has given an example, adjectives can function as the modifier for nouns. Okay, so I have the example of a smart girl or a beautiful smart girl. Okay, same adjective that Minh has used. Now let's look at a tree. You see that adjectives function. Okay, sorry, let me remove this one. Sorry. Now you see that adjective is the modifier. Okay, normally adjective will be the modifiers for now. And what is the modifier? It will take the house of the modifiers, leaving, you see the complement here, empty. Don't forget to leave the complements empty. Don't forget that, because if you forget and you just draw one end bar and then you come straight from end bar to end, then this will be wrong. Okay, now if you have two adjectives, a beautiful, smart girl, then you just have 1 and 2 floors, 2 houses for the adjectives, and you will have the adjective that modifies the noun. Now let's try with the quiet city and those interesting old books. I will give you 1 minute to draw quickly. After 1 minute, I will share the whiteboard and you show me the answer. So within 1 minute, you can use your pen and draw in a note paper. Can everyone else see what Nguyen is drawing?
Yes.
Okay, good. Is it your voice loud?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, that's correct. So everyone, if you can watch the tree, yeah, thank you, Nguyen. That's beautiful, very beautiful tree. Okay, thank you. And you know the video, the lesson is recording. When we finish the class, I will make it into an MP4 file. So if you need it, I can share it with you. And you can review the tree, okay, in front of you. Thanks for a very beautiful one. So the same for the second sentence. When we have those interesting old books, since you have one more adjective now, remember that you just go up one level, okay? So let's come back to our lessons. Now, what we have been talking about is the prenominal modifiers, and we're talking to be more specific about adjectives, the prenominal adjectives. Now, if we have more than one adjective, we have to think about the order of them. And I show you, okay, you can see from here, the order of adjective can be from opinion. If you have like 3 or 4 adjectives, you have to think about the position, which one go first, which one go next, which one go next to the noun. And this is what you have learned in high school. Opinion, size, age, shape, color, origin, material. And last one, useful about is the function of it. When I study in grade 10, I first study about the order of adjectives that modifies a noun. And then my teacher gave me a very interesting poem. And I still remember the poem until now. I don't know why. And this poem is about the orders of adjectives. And if you can remember the poem, you will never forget the position of adjectives in front of noun. If you just have to look at this, sometimes you will be confused of size and shape and color, which one go first, which one go next. But if you remember my poem, okay, not my poem, I'm sorry, the poem that my teacher taught me in grade 10, then you will never forget it. So I will show you the poem, I will read it for you, and try to read in a very rhythm for a poem. Okay, so the poem is, in my nice big flat, there's an old round box for my green Swiss hat and my woolly walking socks. Who has seen this poem before? Do you happen to know this poem before? Yes or no? Okay, you already get to know this poem? Yes or no?
This is my first time.
Not yet.
Okay, this is your first time. So if you look carefully at this poem, you will see nice is for opinion, Big is for size, old for age, round for shape, green for color, swoosh for origin, woolly for material, working for function. And if you try to remember the poem, whenever someone asks you, you can tell them the order immediately. So let's try, okay? Do it, do the poem. Maybe I hear your voice, Hải Long. Hải Long.
Hello.
Can you read the poem?
Okay. In my nice big flat, there's an old round box for my green sweet hat and my woolly walking socks.
Thank you, Long. So this time, let's do not remember only the acronyms. Let's remember the poem. A little bit childish, but I don't know. It goes with me from grade 10 until now. So how many years? So many years I can't even count. I still remember the poem, and I hope that this poem will help you, especially when you teach English to the students in elementary school, secondary school, or high school. They will love this poem. Let's try it in the future. So next class, I will ask you to recite the poem for me. Okay? Okay, once again, the poem is for the order of the adjectives in English. Now we talk about the adjectives in the pre-nominal position. How about the adjectives in post-nominal position? We have a program intended to facilitate learning, or the ministers responsible for health service, or a movie suitable for all students. So you see we have some adjectives, but this time they're in the post-nominal position. When you learn English, you know that adjectives should always be placed before noun. So when you think of adjectives, you think of the pre-nominal modifiers. But here the 3 examples show you adjectives but in the post-nominal position. And when it is in the post-nominal position, you can draw the tree like this. Of course, this is the modifiers. And for modifiers, it should be in the modifiers position, like the minister responsible for health service. Can you do the same for a program intended to facilitate learning and a movie suitable for all students? Can you do? Yes or no? Tell me. Yes or no?
I guess.
Okay, you guess that you can. This is just the same. You do the same. And when you learn AP next week, you can forget the triangles and you will do it on to every single word. Okay. Now let's do a practice. Practice 1 on page 76. We have to do it quickly because we do not have a lot of time. We have A, B, C, D, E, F, and I will give you only 1 minute. Okay, quickly using your note and your pen and draft diagram the noun phrase quickly. That is 1 minute, and I believe that this practice is super easy. So if you can't finish, you can continue to do it at home. Okay, when we have the tutorial section, I will work with you on the practice so that I can move on now. For the second practice, can you see the second practice? With sentence A and B, can you see that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, I want you to order the adjectives in front of the noun and use the correct order of it. Okay, if you don't remember the poem In My Nice Big Flat. That's an old round box for my green sweat hat and my woolly working socks. Okay, I give you 30 seconds and I'll call your name. You tell me the full phrase. Okay, 30 seconds for you now. Okay, that is 30 seconds. Now I want to hear the answer from you. You just read out loud the phrase. You don't have to diagram. Okay, for the first one, let me hear from Huy, Minh Huy. Hello, Minh Huy.
Teacher, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you. Huy, can
Yeah.
you say it in full for me? For A?
So, elegant, big, modern bedroom.
Very good. And how about B?
Expensive, antique, Persian woolen rug.
Very good, Huy. And can you imagine in your head how you would analyze the diagram?
I think the first one, so there are three modifiers, so there would be like for n part, I think.
Yes, very good. So we have 3 AP and then 4 N bar. Very good. And the same for B, right? We're gonna have 4 APs and then we have 5 N bar. Thanks, Huy. That's good. So you're gonna do it like this. Okay. For the elegant, big, modern bedroom. And for the second sentence, we're gonna have 1, 2, 3, 4 AP like this. And we're gonna have 5 N bar. Okay, is it clear? Is everything clear for you? Yes. Okay. Now, the last one, the very last one before I move on to complements. I think you are good with the modifiers. So I have the phrase, the cold coffee with milk. And this phrase is ambiguous. You remember when we studied in syntax last time, we talked about ambiguity. So it means we can analyze this phrase in 2 ways with 2 different meanings. Okay, group work. Okay, 30 seconds for group work, and then tell me why the phrase is ambiguous and how your group will gonna analyze this ambiguity. Okay, I will put you into groups now. If you do not decide, I will call your name, but I prefer you to.
Well, I think that the sentence, the cold coffee with milk, can be understood in 2 ways.
Yes.
Now, the first meaning is we have a glass of coffee with milk added to it, and it
Yes.
is cold.
Yes.
The second meaning is we have a glass of a cup of cold coffee and another glass of milk.
So, Yui, that is correct. But can you imagine how you will gonna draw the 2 different meaning?
I think with the former sense, we can treat the phrase with milk as a post-nominal phrase, post-nominal adjective phrase.
Yes.
Well, the second sentence, we can treat milk as a noun phrase.
Okay, slowly. So, which one do you think will be the head of the phrase? The coffee with milk, the cold coffee with milk. Which one is the head?
Coffee.
Yes, okay, coffee. So, with the meaning of we have cold coffee and then we have milk to the cold coffee, where will be the modifiers? Okay, where will we put the AP? That will be the modifiers for.
The AP will be just right behind the head, cold
Okay.
coffee.
Yes, okay, and then you add up 1 level for the PP with milk, right?
Right.
Okay, thank you, Yu, that's good. So let's come back to my slide, very good. I think group 1 has the correct discussion, and I hope that the other group can also have the same discussion. So for the first meaning, we have the cold coffee, and the cold coffee, and we add milk into the cold coffee. So the head of the whole phrase, definitely coffee, and we have the adjective AP cold to modify for coffee, and then we go up 1 level with milk. While with the second meaning, we have the coffee with milk, and then it's cold. So we have the PP with milk as a modifier for the first position, and then we go up 1 level for the AP. So that's correct. Okay, now as you all know what to do with modifiers, I will move straight on to the complements. Okay, so let's move on to the second part of my part. Okay, we have been talking about the determiners and the specifiers. We have been talking about modifiers. Now I will talk about complements. Now, first of all, I will talk about the PP complements. Okay, PP, prepositional phrase complements. Now, let's look at some sentence A, B, and C. And then we have some corresponding phrases. We have the sentence, they travel to Cambodia. And then from, okay, let me use my pen to do it. Travel, argue, and apply. And from this, we can have the noun phrase, the travel to Cambodia, an argument about money, and an applicant for a job. So we have been talking about the verbal noun. So we have travel as the verbal noun, argument as the verbal nouns, and applicant as the verbal noun. Now, let me ask one student, what do you think is the function of the preposition to Cambodia, about Monday, and for the job in the sentence A, B, and C? Actually, in Zoom, you have the function of raise hand. So before I can call your name, if you happen to know the answer, just put raise hand so you can raise hand to me. Okay, so I can know that you want to say something. You don't need to wait to be called. You can always raise hand. But for this one, let me ask one student. Hạnh Chi. Hello, Hạnh Chi.
Yes.
Okay, Chi. Can you hear me clearly, Chi?
Yes.
Now, Chi, for the sentence, they travel to Cambodia. What is the function of the prepositional phrase to Cambodia? Is it a complement or modifiers?
I think it's a modifier.
Modifiers. Are you sure? So we don't need to Cambodia to complete the verb travel.
Yes, just travel.
Okay, in that case, then travel will be an intransitive verb. But no, Chi, travel here is a prepositional verb. So we need to Cambodia as a complement.
Yes, okay.
Okay, then the same for about money and for the job. It should be
Complement.
yes. So when I move it to the noun phrase here, like the travel to Cambodia, an argument about money, and an applicant for the job, what do you think the function of to Cambodia in the noun phrase now will be? Complement or modifier?
I think it will be a modifier.
Why?
Because it's unnecessary.
It's unnecessary. Okay, thank you. So let me explain it a little bit. You can see the structure in the sentence and the phrase is almost the same, right? They travel to Cambodia and the travel to Cambodia. And when they have the same, okay, it should be the same. Then the function of the PP here should be the complement instead of the modifier. Because in the sentence, they travel to Cambodia or they argue about money, it functions as the complement, not the modifier. So it will be the same here. Now, you can look closely, you can see that there is a perfect parallelism between the VP and the corresponding NP. And we call it the isomorphism. Oh, I'm sorry, I made an S here. It should be isomorphism. So they argue about money and an argument about money. And in the VP, about money is a complement. So the same here, about money should also be the complement. Okay? Now, isomorphism simplifies the process of language learning in children. So when children learn a new language, of course, they do not know the knowledge about VP or NP. but they can recognize this parallelism. So when we draw the tree diagram, we should try to preserve the isomorphism whenever it is possible. Now we talk about the PP. How about the thing that are not PP? Okay. Now phrase should have other type of complements, not just the PP. Okay. Now, as with modifiers, the complements in English may appear pre-nominally or post-nominally. I believe now you are very familiar with the term pre-nominal and post-nominal. Okay, before or after. So I will only finish with the pre-nominal complement, and for the rest, okay, Professor Hector will show you. Now, let's look at some verbal phrase that I have in sentence A and sentence B. He studies chemistry. She studies languages. Now, you can make it into the phrase, the chemistry student and the language student. You can also make it into the post-nominal position like the student of chemistry or the student of languages. Now, I want to draw your attention to one important thing. Look again, okay? Look closely again. Now, from chemistry, he studies chemistry, you make the chemistry student. But she studies languages. Why don't I say the language student, but I say just the language student? Why? Why do I delete the S here? Why is it just in the singular form? Any idea about it? No one is free. Okay. Yeah, Long.
Because I think the languages in the first situation is considered a noun, but in the second situation is considered an adjective.
So if you consider adjective and you draw the tree, should you draw it as an adjective like AP?
Oh, I haven't thought about that yet.
But you have a very good idea. So you can feel that it should not be treated as a noun here, right? Actually, thanks Lam, thanks for your thinking. The question I have for you is why it becomes singular? Now, if you remember that we have learned chapter 2, we have other examples that is similar. So an opener for bottles, we'll say a bottle opener. We do not say a bottles opener. Or a trap for mice, we say a mouse trap instead of a mice trap. So you can observe this situation that the plural has been lost, and this happened in the compound. Do you remember the compound that we discussed in chapter 2? Hello, do you remember?
Yeah.
Okay, so for the compound, the stress is always on the first syllable. The same situation here, we also have the stress on the first one. We say a bottle opener, a mouse trap, not on the second one. And for this, we believe that it should be the problem of morphology rather than syntax, right? Because of compound. Now, if it is the problem of morphology, when you need to add plural, should you add it to opener or to bottle? Tell me.
Opener?
Yes, we add to the end, right? And another piece of evidence is that if you need to add an adjective here to modify for the whole phrase, should you add it to only bottle or mouse, or you add it to the whole phrase? For example, a new one. You are silent now. Tell me if you need to modify.
The whole one?
Okay, so for this, we believe that for all the things that I have been pointing out, we will treat morphologically rather than syntactically. So we should leave it singular like this, okay? However, we know that we will have to treat morphologically, but when we draw the tree, we can't do morphology here. We have to do syntax, right? And when we do syntax, we have, okay, you remember, let me use the pen a little bit. When you do it for compound, okay, sorry, this color is too difficult to see. Let me use another color, white maybe. When you do the compound, you do like this, right? For the two parts of the compound. For example, football player, okay, you do it like this. But now, if it is the same situation and we have to do it syntactically, can you guess that bottle now and mouse now should be complement or modifier?
Complement.
Yes, it should be complement. And if it's complement, we do it like this. You see, it is still similar to a phrase. Oh, I'm drawing so badly. Let me do it one more time. It should be complement so that the NP, okay, I mean bottle, okay, bottle. Will still be in the same position with opener. And we call it, this NP is the sister, okay? NP, NP, and sister. So similar to when you draw the N and N here. Okay, you understand? It will be the complement, not the modifier. If it's a modifier, you have to go one level up. Okay? Is everything clear? You have any question for this? Yeah, it will be the complement. And where is the complement? Okay, we will treat like this. The chemistry student, okay, it will be the complement. Or you already learned NP, so we don't need to use triangles anymore. You can do it straight from the triangle, okay, to like this, okay, NB, NPAR, N in chemistry, the chemistry student. Or now, the modern chemistry student. Okay, what are we going to do? What should we do with the modern chemistry student? Hương Giang. Okay, I'm running out of time, so I will show you the answer quickly. I need to finish my part before leaving the class back to Professor Hector. So for the modern chemistry student, you add modern as the modifier for chemistry, and this means that this student study modern chemistry. Now, let's do this practice. Before we finish, practice number 2 on page 79. You have the foreign car importers and you have a European book publisher. And the phrases are very ambiguous. So you can understand, let me show you some hints before you work. It can be a foreign car and people, those importers import the foreign car. So, or it can be about the car importers and they are from another country, they are foreign. Okay, see, I give you a hint. For this practice, I will give you 3 minutes. Okay, you will work in groups again, and each group you have to draw. Okay, you can use paint or whatever you have, so you can draw the full phrases for me. After you finish working in group, I will ask you to share your desktop, and this will be the end of my part today. I will give you 3 minutes to work in groups now for sentence A and sentence B. Okay, ready? Start working in groups now. I'll make sure you take a photos of practice 2 before I stop sharing. Hello. Group 2, you are so silent. Are you working together? Group 2.
Hello.
Oh, I thought that when I come here, you are busy talking to each other, but you are so silent.
I don't know how to use this.
Oh, you just need to turn on the microphone, talk, and everyone else in your group will hear you. Châu, and Thùy Linh, Khoa, right? You're in the same group, and Hà, Diệu Hà, is it you? So where's okay, here. Now, for the first one, you can do it like this. So if you consider that the cars are foreign, you will do the foreign car importers. If you believe that the car importers are from another country, then you will do like in the second versions. The AP now will be the modifiers, one level up. Okay, and for the second sentence, the books are European. We also have two ways to think. The books can be European, or the publisher, okay, book publisher, European. Okay, so that's the end from my part today. Before I stop, do you have any question to ask? Is there anything that you do not understand?
Teacher.
Yes.
So in the answer for the book are European.
Yes.
So I think there are like two end part, like kind of in line, with, like that there is one end part that come from another end part.
Can you show me your answer, because I can't imagine. So in the first version, we consider that, okay, European book is the complement to publisher. Okay.
Okay, so like there is an end part, like in the book, like there are like two end part.
I can't understand. You have to show me. So, do you understand the answers that I show here?
Yeah, I understand, but I wonder what, like there are like two, like there is one end part that come from another end part, next to each other.
I can't understand your question. There's an end bar coming from what?
An end part that come from another end part.
End bar, no, not end bar. On end bar that come from another.
Yeah.
Okay. I finally understand. Okay. Should be N P here. You mean now? Let me explain. Are you asking about this? Are you asking about this?
Yeah.
You know what? This is the modifier. Okay. European is a modifier. This is the head now. Okay. This is the place. Okay. I need to delete P, but I don't know how to delete. This is the place for complement. Okay. And since we have no complement, we'll leave it empty. So the AP go up to the place of modifier. Understand? And this whole is an NP. And this NP is a complement here. So this is the correct one, just N bar. Understand? This is the place of the complement. Do you understand it? This is what I love about Snyder. He can make just about anything look badass. Hello, tell me, do you understand it?
pool underwater. You're grateful. The rocks below.
Okay, you need to tell me whether you understand or not. So let me analyze version 1 again. So the books, okay, we have a European book publisher, okay? And the whole phrase European book here is the the complement to the noun publisher. So we draw NP here as the complement to publisher. And now we analyze the NP. In this NP, we have the AP as the modifier. That's why it takes the position of modifier. I think it's very clear. If you still are not comfortable with that, okay, go to my tutorial section and I will say once again for you. I have to start the lesson now. You're going to have 15-minute break. It's 2:30 now. You just leave your Zoom here. Okay, do not log out because you need to log in back again. Just leave it here. We start back again at 2:45 sharp. Okay, don't come late. If you need to do something personal, just do it now and then come back exactly at 2:45. Okay, we will continue in this one with Professor Hector. Okay, have your break now.
He has a point. Humanize yourself with someone who doesn't care what species you are. As funny and accurate that description is, I really like Barry's sincerity here.
Okay, so here then, notice that you would have a D structure, send some flowers his girlfriend, send some flowers to his girlfriend. So we insert the to. So we show that at the level of S structure and we add that to. Notice that this is exactly the same that we were doing for the Japanese. For the Japanese, we had the original D structure was Meri, Tegami, Okurimasu. Then for the S structure, we added the O and the ni, and we put the little arrows here to indicate that these are extra elements. So this is the final structure for Japanese. Then the final structure for English would be the structure that we have here, send some flowers to his girlfriend. Okay, so here again, that's the D structure. This is the S structure. We need to indicate that the to is inserted. And this is the final structure that we would show. We would show send some flowers to his girlfriend. We would show that. So we show the S structure with the arrows under the inserted elements. This is the final structure that we will show. Now remember that we said that we had different classes of indirect objects. So we said the first class of indirect objects was the class that inserted to. So this is the structure that we would show for class 1 of indirect objects, send some flowers to his girlfriend. Then we had another group of verbs that took for, like bake a cake for his girlfriend. We would show that structure. And then we also had a class 3, and this is the class that could take either to or for. So in this case, we would insert to or we would insert for. Okay, so you need to show that to and for are inserted in this case. So notice that in this system, Japanese and English are treated exactly the same way. Okay, so we have a D structure without the markers, and then we have an S structure where we add the markers, and we show that we are adding the markers by putting this double arrow under the element that is being inserted. Okay? Okay, so here's a challenge for you. Try to diagram this VP. Mary sold a car to John. Mary sold a car to John. Okay? Try to diagram the VP. 1 minute. Mary sold a car to John. Okay, so the VP should look like this. You sell a car, John, to is not there, then we insert to, okay? So this should be the final structure that you have in your notebooks. Okay, sell a car to John. Okay, I hope you got it right. Let's do another one. This is a harder one. She cooked Chinese food for her boyfriend yesterday. She cooked Chinese food for her boyfriend yesterday. Okay, diagram the VP. 1 minute. She cooked Chinese food for her boyfriend yesterday. All right, so in this case, we have cook Chinese food for her boyfriend. Notice that for is inserted, so we need to put that little arrow. Notice that Chinese food and her boyfriend are direct objects and indirect objects, so they should be under the first V bar. And yesterday, as we discussed last week, is considered an adverb in this case, so we should have an adverb phrase as a modifier to the V bar. So we have two V bars. The first V bar includes all the complements. That includes the direct object, the indirect object. In this case, the indirect object is marked with this for that is there, okay? And then yesterday is a modifier, so we need an extra V bar for that modifier. Okay, now before we enter into the important topic of today, which is case theory, I'm gonna stop the screen here and see if you have any questions about direct objects or indirect objects. You can either speak your question or you can write your questions, okay? Any questions about direct and indirect objects? And you should be able to do that pretty much in any language now. Any questions? No questions? No questions? All right, no questions, then we continue. All right, so we're going to be talking about case theory. Now, what is case theory? This is something that, if you're not familiar with other languages, this is kind of difficult to understand. So let me give you an example how this works. Take an example in English, for example. Let's take Mary. You say, Mary speaks well. Now, if I tell you to change Mary by a pronoun, you would say she speaks well. So in this case, Mary becomes she. Now, if I say, I know Mary very well, notice if I change Mary in this case, I have to say, I know her very well. Now, in this case, Mary was changed to her. So what's happening here? Notice that in both cases, we have Mary on the left, but on the right, we have she and her. Let's take another example. I always study with Mary. If I replace Mary, now I always study with her. I get her again. I don't get she in that case. Even though on the left, I still have Mary. Notice in examples A, B, and C, I have Mary in all the cases, but on the right, the forms are changing. Take another one. I always go to Mary's house. Mary's, I'm getting Mary apostrophe S. This is what we call the genitive, the possessive Mary. If I change that, I would get, I always go to her house. Notice that I get her again. And if I say, this is my house and that is Mary's, if I change Mary's in this case, I would say, this is my house and that is hers. So notice that on the left, I always have Mary, 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 and then two cases I have Mary's. And in the other cases, I have she, her, and hers. We have different forms, okay? So what's happening here? Well, what's happening is that pronouns are inflected for case. Pronouns in English have case. So this is why you have to know that she is for the subject, her is for the objects, and her also for the possessive, and hers is for the possessive pronoun. You have to learn the forms. Those forms represent case. In English, nouns typically are not marked for case, but pronouns are, okay? So this is why we need to do that. Now, I want you to compare English with Spanish, for example. Okay, so I say, she speaks Vietnamese. In English, I say she. In Spanish, you would say, ella habla vietnamita. So notice that she becomes ella. Now, I know her very well. Notice that her, in this case, is equivalent to la. So I would say, la conozco muy bien. So we have two different forms in English. We also have two different forms in Spanish. But now look at what happens with I wrote to her, if you have the indirect object. If you have the indirect object, in English you still say her, in Spanish you have to say le. So notice that in Spanish we distinguish between the direct object and the indirect object, which is something that you do not do in English. Okay, so in Spanish you would get la, and then here you get le. So you have to know if something is a direct or an indirect object. Now, imagine that you have the possessive. So you say, I always go to her house. Now, in Spanish, you would say, siempre voy a su casa. So notice that we have another form, even though in English, we're still getting the form her. Finally, in English, if you say my house and hers, notice that you say hers, you have a different form in English too. In Spanish, you have an additional form. You would say mi casa y la suya. Notice that I have a different form. So in English, you have only three forms. You have she, her, and hers. But in Spanish, you have 5 forms. Ella, la, le, su, and suya. Okay? So Spanish shows case much more than English. Okay? So Spanish pronouns show case many more cases than English. Okay? So English in that sense is very easy because nouns do not have case. Pronouns have case, but in Spanish, pronouns have many more cases, okay? And then look at another language like Albanian, for example. Here I'm trying to show what happens to Martin, okay? So Martin is going to be a direct object, indirect object, etc. Look at what happens to Martin. So if Martin is the subject, I want to say Martin speaks Albanian, I would have to say Martini flet sheep. Martini flet sheep. Martini. So Martini is Martin. Now, if I say I have invited Martin, I would say un kamftua Martinin. So notice that Martin became Martinin. So the subject would be Martini. When we have it as a direct object, it would be Martinin. Okay? Now, what happens if we have Martin as an indirect object? I have sent Martin a letter. You have to say un I kam dërguar Martinit një letter, Martinit. Okay, so notice when we have a subject, we would say Martini. Direct object, we would say Martinin. Indirect object, we would say Martinit. Okay, what happens if you have a preposition? Like, for example, I live near Martin. Well, in this case, you would still say Martinit. So you say un jetoj pran Martinit. So you still have Martinit in that case. And if you say, this is Martin's house, then you say, kjo është shtëpia e Martinit. Martinit. You have to have that extra e in there, and still you have Martinit. So notice that in this case, in Albanian, nouns also have case. In English, you can see the case only in pronouns. In Spanish, you can only see the case in pronouns, but you see more cases than you see in English. In Albanian, you see case all over the place. So you have case in nouns, you have case in pronouns, okay? So when you learn Albanian, you have to learn all the different cases with all the nouns. And of course, masculine nouns are going to behave differently from feminine nouns, okay? So this is the way that case is represented in different languages. So let's talk about case. So with case, we have the different forms of pronouns and noun phrases are realization of different cases. And in the theory of principles and parameters, then, we have 3 abstract cases. We have 3 abstract cases, okay? We have nominative. This would be the case that we assign to subjects. We have objective. This is the case that we assign to objects, and that's why we call that objective. And we have oblique, and this is the case that we assign to prepositions. Okay, so we have three different cases: nominative, objective, and oblique. Okay, three cases. I repeat: nominative, you assign to subjects; objective, you assign to verbs, objects of verbs; and oblique, you assign to objects of prepositions. Okay, only three cases. Only three cases. Now, in this lesson, we are only going to concentrate on two cases. We're going to concentrate on objective, and we're going to concentrate on oblique. So we will concentrate on objective and oblique case. Now, what categories assign case? How do we assign case? Well, we will say that verbs assign objective case. So verbs assign objective case, and prepositions assign oblique case. Okay? So verbs assign objective case, prepositions assign oblique case. And we're going to have a case condition. What does the case condition say? The case condition says that every noun phrase must have case. So every time you draw a noun phrase in a tree, you have to make sure that that noun phrase gets case. If you don't get case, you violate the case condition, and the case condition is a universal condition. Okay, so you cannot violate the case condition. Okay, so that is the case condition. Okay, so let me stop here and see if you have any questions. You can write your questions or type your questions or speak your questions. Any questions? Any questions? Okay, so the point to remember is that we have three cases. We have nominative for subjects, objective for objects of verbs, and oblique for objects of prepositions. Okay, and you have to remember then that every noun phrase needs to have case. Every noun phrase needs to have case. Okay, any questions? No questions? All right, we continue then. Okay, so let's look at particular examples. Let's look at, for example, I study physics. Okay, I study physics. Let me ask you, you answer in your head, okay? What case does physics get in this case? What case does physics get in this case? Physics gets objective case. How does it get objective case? Because we have a verb and a complement, and the verb automatically assigns objective case to its complement. Okay, so if you're a complement of a verb, automatically you're going to get objective case. Okay, so direct objects get objective case directly from the verb. The verb assigns objective case to the complement. Okay, verbs assign objective case. Let's take another case. We talk about physics. We talk about physics. What case does physics have in this case? What case does physics have in this case? Try to answer in your head. Well, in this case, physics has oblique case. And what does it have oblique case? Well, it has oblique case because prepositions assign oblique case. Okay, so whenever you have a preposition, preposition is going to assign oblique case. Okay, so prepositions assign oblique case. So here, the rule to remember is that verbs are going to assign objective case to the complements, direct objects, indirect objects all the time, okay? And prepositions are going to assign oblique case, okay? So verbs assign objective case, prepositions assign oblique case. If you're a complement of a verb, automatically you get objective case. If you are the complement of a preposition, automatically you get oblique case. Okay, let me stop here and see if you have any questions, because now we're going to go into the real problem. Any questions? Yes, we call it oblique. Oblique, oblique. This term comes from Latin. Okay, in Latin, prepositions are signed oblique case. So that's why we call it oblique case. And here, it's important to keep in mind that we are talking about abstract case. Later, I'm going to talk about abstract and real case. So this is all about abstract cases, and we have only 3 abstract cases. We have nominative for subjects, objective for complements of verbs, and oblique for objects of prepositions. Any other questions? No other questions? All right, then we are going to be looking at the real problem now. Okay, so now we're going to look at post-nominal noun complements. A noun may take a complement to its left or to its right, but notice what happens when you have a complement to the right. Okay, so you discuss the complements to the left with Kung Ao. So you have, for example, a chemistry student. Okay, you have a complement to the left. Now, if we put the complement to the right, in English you cannot do that. You cannot say a student chemistry. You have to say a student of chemistry. A student of chemistry. So we get this very, very strange particle here that appears, this of, that we need to explain why this of appears in this case. Okay? Now, notice that there is a perfect isomorphism between the VP and the NP. So you have study chemistry. Now, when you have study chemistry, notice that chemistry gets objective case from study. Okay, the verb assigns objective case. So chemistry is happy because every noun phrase has to have case, and chemistry in this case has case. It has objective case. So chemistry is perfectly happy. Now, notice that the structure is parallel at D structure when we say a student of chemistry. So we have student chemistry. But now, chemistry has a problem. And the problem is that nouns do not assign case. Remember, verbs assign objective case, prepositions assign oblique case, nouns do not assign case. So in this case, chemistry is not happy because chemistry, the way it is now, is violating the case filter. Okay, so here we have an emergency. Okay, this is an emergency. We have a noun phrase without case. We have an emergency because we have a noun phrase without case. We have a noun phrase that does not have case, and that would violate the case condition. We cannot violate the case condition. Remember, the case condition is a universal condition, so we cannot violate it. So what do we do in this case? Well, in this case, universal grammar gives us an insertion element, which is of. So this of that appears with student of chemistry, notice that this is an inserted element. Now, this of looks like a preposition, but is actually not a preposition. This is what we call a pseudo preposition. And why do we call it a pseudo preposition? We call it a pseudo preposition because real prepositions are PPs. This is not a PP. This is just an element that appears extra between D structure and S structure. You see? So this is a pseudo preposition. However, in spite of being a pseudo preposition, it still assigns oblique case. Okay, so it's not a preposition, but it assigns oblique case like preposition. So this is why we say that this is a pseudo preposition. Okay, so I repeat, at D structure, we only have student chemistry, and chemistry would have a problem because it would not get case. So this is an emergency. Now, how does universal grammar help us to get out of this emergency? It inserts this of, okay? And what does this of do? This of is a pseudo preposition, and the pseudo preposition then assigns oblique case to chemistry, and now chemistry is happy because chemistry does not violate the case condition, okay? So this is a special rule, and this is a rescue operation, okay? This is a rescue operation that we have here, okay? So again, look at student of chemistry. At D structure, we have student chemistry. We have a problem. Chemistry does not get case because nouns do not assign case. So at S structure, we insert of, and this extra of then is going to give us case to chemistry. Of is a pseudo preposition, it's not a real preposition, and is there just to give case to chemistry so that chemistry does not violate the case condition. Okay? All right, let me stop here and see if you have any questions. So we talked about of insertion. We call this operation, we call it of insertion. Of insertion. And of insertion is an emergency operation, okay? It's there to save us from having a noun phrase without case. Notice that this is very, very common. For example, imagine that I say, he drives a taxi, okay? How would you make a noun phrase out of that? What is he? Write the answer. So he drives a taxi. What is he? Okay, taxi driver, but remember that that could be morphology, right? So if you put the complement to the left, that is morphology. Now, how would you do that syntactically? You put the complement on the other side. If you put the complement on the other side, what do you say? No, not taxi driver. Yes, yes, yes. You would say the driver of a taxi, or the driver of the taxi. The driver of the taxi. Let's imagine that he composed that song. Okay, he composed that song. What is he? He composed that song. What is he? That's right. That's right. That's right. He's the composer of that song. Okay, let's imagine that he built that house. Okay, he built that house. What is he? That's right. That's right. The builder of the house. So notice that this of always appears there, even though it's not there with the verb. So this is why we say that this is an emergency operation. It appears in almost all the cases, you see, where you don't have it in the verb. It's an extra element that helps us solve the problem. Imagine that, for example, I say, he painted those houses. Okay, he painted those houses. What is he? Yeah, the painter of those houses. You see, the painter of those houses. Exactly. Okay. Imagine that, for example, he wrote that poem. Okay. He wrote that poem. He wrote that poem. He wrote that poem. What is he? The writer of that poem. Exactly. So you see, so this is very, very productive. So whenever we want to make a noun phrase out of a verb, so this is a deverbal noun, and we have a complement, typically the complement is going to be preceded by of. Okay, the complement is typically going to be preceded by of. Okay, now let's look at pre and post nominal complements again. So notice student of chemistry. In this case, chemistry is the complement of student, right? Because you study chemistry, the student of chemistry, there's a parallelism. And in this case, we said that of assigns oblique case to chemistry, okay? Now, in English, you also have the possibility of having a pre-nominal complement, okay? You have a pre-nominal complement, like the chemistry student. Now, what case does chemistry have in this case? What case does chemistry have in the second case, the green chemistry? What case does it have? Let me go back and let me see how you type the answer. What case does chemistry have? The green chemistry here on the right, the chemistry student. Let me go back, type your answer. So what case does chemistry have? So what case does chemistry have in the phrase chemistry student. Nominative, subjective, nominative. You're sending to me. Nominative, nominative, nominative. Everyone is wrong. Yes. Mao Yadom has the right answer. Okay, it doesn't have case. It does not have case. Remember, subjects get nominative case. We haven't talked about subjects. We do not have subjects in our sentences yet. Okay, so notice that in this case, let me go back. Okay, notice that it cannot get nominative because this is not a subject. This is not a sentence. Okay, you need to have a sentence in order to have a subject. So this is definitely not nominative. Okay, and it cannot get oblique case because we don't have of. And nouns do not assign case. So in this case, notice that chemistry does not have case. So we say that pre-nominal noun phrases escape the case condition, and this is because this is between the morphology and syntax interface. This might actually be morphology. This is morphology. This is really not syntax, but we represent it syntactically, okay? But this is really part of morphology, okay? So remember that pre-nominal nouns escape the case condition, okay? So this is the main point. Pre-nominal noun phrases are allowed to violate the case condition because they are part of morphology. Okay, so here's a noun phrase for you. Diagram this. The students of linguistics from Saigon. The students of linguistics from Saigon. Okay, do that in your notebook. The students of linguistics from Saigon. Careful with the PPs and with the inserted of. Okay, so in this case, notice that we would have the students of linguistics. So of linguistics, of would be inserted because we have a complement of students and we have a noun phrase that would violate the case condition, but it's on the right. And if you're on the right, you're not allowed to violate the case condition. Crucially, from Saigon in this case is a modifier, right? And we talked about these modifiers with Kung Up before, and you have to put it then as a modifier, as an extra in bar to the structure, okay? All right. Now, try this one. The Saigon students of linguistics. The Saigon students of linguistics. Okay, 1 minute, do that in your notebook. The Saigon students of linguistics. Okay, so in this case, Saigon is a noun phrase and it's a modifier. So notice that you can have noun phrase modifiers on the left, pre-nominal modifiers that are noun phrases. So you would get the Saigon students of linguistics, and of course the of is inserted in this case. So notice that we have, if we have a modifier from Saigon on the right, you would have a PP. But if we have it in front of the noun, it's just a noun phrase. And again, this is why we say that this might actually be morphology and not necessarily syntax, okay? So notice that when we look at modifiers, you can have a modifier in a post-nominal position, or you can have a modifier in a pre-nominal position. If it's in a post-nominal position, we have a PP. Okay, and if it's in a pre-nominal position, then notice that it's just a noun phrase modifier. Now, because it's a pre-nominal noun phrase, again, even though it's a noun phrase, it does not need to get case because this is in the morphology level. It's not really syntax, okay? So remember that, very, very important. So the exception to the case condition is going to be prenominal noun phrases. Prenominal noun phrases escape the case condition, which means that prenominal noun phrases do not need to get case. Prenominal noun phrases do not need to get case. This is very, very, very important. Okay, let's try a hard one. Okay, so this is a super challenge. Try to do this verb phrase, okay? We invited the author of that famous novel. Okay, draw the structure for that. We invited the author of that famous novel. We invited the author of the famous novel. Draw the VP, and then for each noun phrase, you're going to tell me which case does the noun phrase get. Okay, so draw the structure, and then for each noun phrase that you have in that structure, tell me what case that noun phrase is getting and how it is getting that case. Okay, here's the structure. It would be, we invited the author of that famous novel. So we insert of in this case because we have a noun phrase, and that noun phrase is a complement of another noun. So whenever you have a noun as a complement of another noun, you're going to insert that of, okay? Now, we're going to check and make sure that every noun phrase gets case. So let's start with the low noun phrase, that famous novel. What case does that noun phrase get? What case does that noun phrase get? Well, that one gets case from the pseudo preposition. Author, the noun author, cannot assign case. Nouns do not assign case. So in this case, we have that extra element, and that extra element is going to give us oblique case to that noun phrase. Now, notice that we still have one more noun phrase, the one in blue. Okay, we have one more noun phrase. What case does that big noun phrase get? Does it get oblique case? Well, that big noun phrase is the complement of invite. Therefore, is going to get objective case. Okay, if you're the complement of a verb, you get objective case. If you're the complement of a preposition, you get oblique case. Okay, so here we have two noun phrases with two different cases. Now, in English, you don't really see that, but if you had a language, for example, like Albanian, yes, you would definitely see that. Okay, you would see that author has one case and novel has another case. Now, in English, you don't see that, so it's all abstract, okay? But we have to do it this way. All right? Very good. So let me see. I'm going to stop sharing the screen and see if you have any questions for the moment. Any questions? You can speak the question or you can write the question. Any questions? Any questions? So for the moment, we have seen that you have objective case. Objective case is assigned by the verb. So the verb assigns objective case to its complements. And we have oblique case. And we saw that oblique case then is going to be assigned by a preposition to the complements of a preposition. Okay, so we have two cases. And we have what we call the case condition. Okay, so with the case condition, the case condition, every noun phrase has to have case. So you have to make sure that every noun phrase in the structure that you draw will get case, okay? It doesn't matter what case, it needs to get one case, all right? Any questions? And remember that then we said that of is a pseudo, it's a pseudo preposition. And why do we say that it's a pseudo preposition? It's a pseudo preposition because it's not a real preposition. Why is it not a real preposition? It's not a real preposition because it does not project a PP. Notice, of is not an PP, it's inserted. It's an extra element that appears between G structure and S structure. It's a false preposition, a fake preposition. And of, because it's a pseudo preposition, it still assigns oblique case like the normal prepositions. Okay, so those are the main points there. All right, now let's look at some complicated cases now. And we're going to talk about measure nouns and mass nouns. Okay, remember from your English language classes that a mass noun is a noun that you cannot count. Okay, you cannot count. So for example, if you say bread, you cannot count bread. You cannot say one bread, two breads, three breads. You have to put a measure noun, okay? And what would be an example of a measure noun? So for example, in the case of bread, we can count the slices. So you can say some slices of bread, some slices of bread. Now, in this case, notice that we have then a mass noun, and the only way that we're going to be able to count units of this mass noun is through what we might call a measure noun. Okay, so whenever you have a measure noun, you're going to have this structure. You're going to have an NP, which is going to be the measure noun, and that measure noun is going to take another NP as a complement, and you're going to have an inserted of in that case as well. Notice that measure nouns take a mass noun phrase as a complement, and they have an inserted of. Okay, so this is the structure for mass nouns with measure nouns. Okay, so some slices of bread. Okay, show me the structure for there. A drop of water. A drop of water. Okay, so water, again, I cannot say one water, two waters, three waters. You count the drops in this case. Or if you're talking about bottles, then you would count the bottles. You say one bottle of water. Show me the structure for a drop of water. Okay, so again, the measure noun phrase takes a complement, and the complement is the mass noun, and we get an inserted of. Notice again that this is very, very, very common. Okay, can you give me more examples of measure and noun phrases? Let me stop here and see if you can invent your own measure noun phrases and mass nouns. Give me more examples. Who can give me more examples? So we have a drop of water. We have some slices of bread. A piece of advice, very good. A box of chocolates, that's right. A bunch of flowers, a bowl of pho, for example, right. A bunch of bananas, very good. Notice, in all these noun phrases, you are getting of, you see? So this of that you're getting there, this is the inserted of. This is the element that is going to help you connect the measure with the mass noun. And a dozen, yeah, a dozen eggs, yes, but notice that you can also say a dozen of eggs. Dozen eggs is like a ready-made phrase. A cup of tea, that's correct, okay? That's correct, okay? So in the case of a dozen eggs, that's a phrase, okay? So this is just, it might just be morphology, okay? It's not really, you can take that to be a word in that case, all right? So anytime that you're gonna get this of here, with a measure is going to be the inserted of. Notice that this is super productive in English. You can get a kilo of bread, you can get a glass of water, you can get a box of chocolates, okay? You can get a piece of luggage, okay? And so on. All right, now there's another case that we are going to treat as complements, and this is what we call content complement. Whenever a noun is considered or is analyzed, or you interpret a noun phrase as the content of another noun, we are going to analyze it as a complement. So for example, if I say an argument about money, okay, an argument about money, the argument is about money. Okay, so the content of the argument is money. So this is going to be a complement, okay? Or if we say, for example, there you have an argument about money. So because about money is the content of the noun, we take it to be the complement. Now, in this case, we also have a verb, right? You argue about something. Yeah? So you have the isomorphism, the parallelism there. But you have the travel to Cambodia. Again, you have a book on syntax. Syntax is the content of the book. Therefore, on syntax would be a PP complement, okay? A conference about Corona, that's the content of the conference, so that's also going to be a complement. Now, notice that I can also have something like a bottle of wine. Wine, in this case, is the content of the bottle. The bottle has wine inside. So in this case, this is also going to be a complement. Now, in this case, we have of, but remember that of, in this case, is going to be inserted. And if I say a picture of John, now in this case, John appears in the picture. John is inside the picture, okay? So in this case, John is the content of the picture. Now, in this case, John is also the complement, and this of that appears in a picture of John is going to be inserted, just like the examples that we saw before, okay? So arguments that denote content are analyzed as complements. You must remember that. Okay, now you have to be careful with quantifiers and count nouns. So we talked about mass nouns. Now, how do we count nouns? Well, typically we use quantifiers, things like two. For example, my two sons, or something like the first chapter. Okay, so notice that here you have two and you have first. Now notice that in this case, we take the quantifier, we have a quantifier phrase, okay? So these are going to be quantifiers. So quantifiers are going to be elements that denote quantity. So these are going to be numbers, and they're going to be cardinal or ordinal numbers. So first, second, last, they're all going to be quantifiers. And we analyze them as modifiers. Notice that the first n bar here is empty, and it's empty because this is reserved for complements. And the same happens here with my two sons. My two sons, the first n here is empty because this is reserved for complements. Two in this case is a modifier, so we have that in the second n bar as typical modifiers. So notice quantifiers, whenever you get a quantifier with the count noun, you're going to analyze that as a QP, and of course it's going to be a QP modifier. Okay, so quantifiers are going to be analyzed as modifiers of the noun. All right, so are you ready for a super challenge? All right, let's go for the super challenge of the day. And the super challenge of the day is going to be very easy. How about my two pieces of luggage? How would you analyze, show the structure for my two pieces of luggage? Okay, 1 minute. My two pieces of luggage. So careful with luggage, careful with two, careful with of, careful with my. Okay, so you have to be careful with all these words here. All right, here we go. So notice that we're talking about luggage, but we are counting that. So it's going to be my two pieces of luggage, okay? Now, luggage is a mass noun, okay? So it's a mass noun, is going to have to take a measure noun phrase. Now, in this case, the measure noun phrase is going to be a piece, but at the same time, piece is going to have a quantifier. Okay, so we have two pieces. So notice then what's happening here. Pieces takes a noun phrase as a complement, and this is going to be the mass noun, luggage. Okay, so pieces of luggage. And we get of here. Why do we get of in this case? We get of in this case because pieces cannot assign case to the NP. Okay, this cannot get case. So we get of, and then of would then assign the oblique case to luggage. Okay, so we have pieces. Now, to is a quantifier, and quantifiers are modifiers. Because this is a modifier, it has to appear then in an extra n bar. Okay, so this is going to appear in an extra n bar. Now, possessives are determiners, and determiners are specifiers. Okay, so this has to appear as a T in a specifier position. Okay, remember that determiners can be articles, so you can say the two pieces of luggage. You can say possessives, my two pieces of luggage, and you can also have a demonstrative. So you can also say these two pieces of luggage. Okay, so you can get articles, possessives, and demonstratives. Those are going to be the specifiers of the noun phrase when you have my two pieces of luggage. Okay, now the last point is that you're going to have some tricky nouns. Okay, so what are some tricky nouns? Well, for the moment, everything has been easy because we have a verb that we can think of, we can associate with the verb. So for example, they study chemistry, we have the students of chemistry. So we know that chemistry is a complement of students because we have a verb. But if we say something like the president of the country, notice that we don't have the verb. We have the verb to preside, but to preside does not really necessarily imply a president. So notice that here there is really no verb that we can associate with this. Now, in spite of that, notice that we're still going to treat this as a complement, okay? Because we understand that the president governs the country. The president controls the country, you see? So the country is in a complement relation with the president, okay? So in this case, we're also going to be inserting of, and this of is also going to be assigning oblique case to the noun phrase, because the noun, the president, cannot assign case to the NP, so we need that extra of that is going to be assigning case to the complement, which is the other noun phrase. Notice that you can get things like, for example, the dean of the school. There is no verb to dean. However, we know that the dean controls the school. The dean governs the school. So in this case, the school is going to be a complement of the dean. Or we get things like the author of the book, the author of the book. Now, in modern English, we do have the verb to author now. That exists now, but you know, before it didn't exist. And we took it, it's a conversion, okay? So we took that from the noun, we invented the verb, okay? The news of the virus, notice that we don't have a verb for news. However, virus, we can analyze that as the content, okay? So in this case, news and virus are in a relation of complement and head. News is the head, virus is the complement. And if you have the rumor of an epidemic, it's going to be again a complement. So notice that this is again very, very productive in English, and all these cases are going to be analyzed like complements, okay? Many other examples. All right, so we are ready to summarize. Let me see if there are any questions before we present and discuss the summary. Any questions? A pinch of salt, a cup of tea? Yes, so how would I replace been by a pronoun or an adjective in this case? His, exactly, his, right. I would get his. Notice in this case, I could not say he, and I could not say him. I have to say his. And the reason is that this is not a subject, so I cannot say he. This is not a direct object, so I cannot say him. This is a possessive, and we will study possessives later. We will see that possessives need to get a special case that we call genitive case. Let me write it for you, genitive case. Okay. So possessives are going to get genitive case, and we will talk about genitive case later. We have like 2 or 3 more chapters before we can talk about genitive case. Okay, any more questions before we summarize what we did today? Any more questions? That was a good question about nominative. No? Okay, so let's summarize and then we're done. Okay, so basically we saw that we have levels of D structure, S structure, and LF, and we have transformations, and we looked at markers. Okay, so we looked at O and Ni in Japanese, we looked at 2 and 4 in English, okay? But today, we also inserted a new element. Today, we inserted of, okay? And we said that of then is a pseudo preposition, okay? We insert of to save it, noun phrase, from not getting case, okay? And it's an inserted element, so you must always put this double arrow under the of, okay? That's an important point. Now, why does of appear? Well, because we have a case condition, and the case condition says that every noun phrase must have case. So whenever you have a noun phrase, you have to make sure that the noun phrase gets case, okay? Now, how many cases are there? Well, if you're a verb, you assign objective case. If you're a preposition, you assign oblique case. Today, we only talked about 2 cases, objective and oblique. We still have to talk about nominative, but we will talk about nominative when we start talking about subjects. Notice that we still don't have subjects in our structure. We only have objects and modifiers, no subjects. So that's coming up, 2 more chapters. Now, why do we have of insertion? So this is a question now. Why do we have of insertion? Well, of insertion is what we call a last resort operation, okay? Last resort operation. Now, what does last resort mean? Last resort means it's an emergency, okay? So last resort means it's an emergency. So that means that whenever there's nothing else that I can do, then I have this emergency situation, and boom, I get an insertion, and this insertion then is going to save me from having a bad sentence, okay? So we insert of to save the structure from violating the case condition, okay? So this is what we call a last resort operation, okay? Very important, last resort operation, okay? That's the technical term. All right, so I guess we are done. And